want to turn to something else, Ukraine. They have actually submitted a 20-point peace plan to the Trump administration. And the bottom line is they want to lock in their legal borders. They don't want to cede any land to Russia. The Ukrainians are proposing a demilitarized free economic zone in the Donbas region where U.S. businesses would be able to operate. Now, Russia has been trying to take control of that region completely for months.
This would mean real, solid, legally binding security guarantees for our country.
So it's not clear how Zelensky's plan is actually being received by the U.S., but with Ukraine refusing to accept the surrender of Donbas, the head of NATO is issuing a pretty dire warning.
We are Russia's next target. And we are already in harm's way. When I became NATO Secretary General last year, I warned that what is happening in Ukraine could happen to allied countries too. That we had to shift to a wartime mindset.
Joining me now is Ivo Dalder, the former U.S. ambassador to NATO. He joins us live from Brussels and NATO headquarters. Thanks so much for being with us.
Great to be here, Audie. Thanks for having me on.
So first, I want to talk about what we just heard, the wartime footing. Is this fear real, palpable, that you're feeling in that office? And if it is Europe really acting that way, right? Are they pushing as hard as they can?
So the fear is in parts of NATO headquarters and in part of the NATO countries. It's particularly strong, of course, in the countries that border Russia, the Baltic states, Poland, other states in Eastern Europe, and the Nordic countries. Indeed, the Nordic countries, Sweden, Finland, Norway, have prepared for many years for the possibility of a confrontation. It's one of the reasons why Finland and Sweden joined this alliance just a couple of years ago. And the Swedes have just issued a leaflet saying what to do in case of war. There is this sense that war is no longer a theoretical possibility. It's a very real possibility. So one of the things that they are doing is they're spending a lot more on defense, very significant amount. An agreement to spend up to 3.5% on real defense capabilities and another 1.5% on defense-related capabilities, 5% of GDP. It's a big deal. The biggest fear, though, is actually not from Russia. It's from the United States. And the question of whether the United States shares this view of Russia or not.
I want to talk about the money a little bit more because this free economic zone it looks kind of like an appeal to the Trump administration, whose peace plans often have something like this economic model built in. It's something that they used in the past. I think it was Serbia and Kosovo back all the way in 2020. Obviously, with Israel and Palestine, they talked about making like a resort area. And so what do you make of Ukraine basically trying to say, look what you could have? Do you think that's a winning move?
Well, it's clear that President Trump and his administration look at the world as a real estate set of real estate areas in which the resources that may be in the ground are critical. Remember that a few months ago, Ukraine actually signed an agreement with the United States about the exploration of critical minerals and natural resources if and when a ceasefire and a peace were to be settled. So I think what President Zelensky is trying to do is to say, we're the good guys. We're not the ones who are standing in the way of peace. It's the Russians who are standing in the way of peace, and putting on the table a plan that says this is what we would accept, including an economic incentive for the United States to buy into it. I don't think this will get us any closer to peace. Peace will require the Russians to agree to something that the Ukrainians and the Europeans can agree to, and for 4 years that hasn't been the case. This is more a public relations effort by the Ukrainians to demonstrate to the President of the United States that his statement that the problem is Zelensky not accepting the peace agreement, that's not correct. He's more than willing to accept a ceasefire and indeed perhaps open up economic opportunities for the United States.
So Ambassador Dalder, thank you so much for speaking with us.
My pleasure.